Why does a good God allow bad things to happen? C.S. Lewis, the great thinker who lived from 1898 to 1963, addressed this in a number of occasions. Lewis compared the atheist argument against God to an inmate in an insane asylum writing darkness all over the walls. Darkness, darkness, darkness. Lewis said this, the person in the asylum no more blots out the sun by writing darkness hundreds of times all over the walls than the atheist blots out the reality of God by shaking his fist and saying, there is no God, there is no God. One of the prime reasons that people doubt whether or not a good God exists is because of pain and suffering. And the line of reasoning very often goes like this, and this dates to a person named Epicurus, but he basically said, if God is good, he would know what to do. If he's powerful, he could do something. If God is benevolent, he would act in our best interest. And people very often, they convince themselves that there must not be a God, because if there were a God, the pain and suffering that I go through wouldn't really have happened. Now, let me just say this. Hang with me for a second. Whenever we make a value judgment and we say, okay, this is good, that is bad, what we're really saying is this circumstance or this action is good or bad in relation to something. In other words, when we make value judgments, we're measuring from an immovable objective standard, which is God. And really, when the atheists say there is no God because this or that was bad, that's really a logically meaningless statement, because the atheist, in saying there is no God, is saying there is no ultimate standard of goodness from which we measure, oh, and by the way, this over here is not good or is good. So without God, the standard from which we view and measure and analyze, without God, there's no good or bad in the universe. There's just stuff. Let's go back to the thing about the problem of evil, because it touches each one of us personally. Eventually, we will all go through these dark valleys, the dark night of the soul. And let me just say this, that the problem of evil is just part of being in this fallen world. Is this heaven yet? Is this a perfect world yet? No, it's not yet. But it's, as many philosophers have said, the best way to the best world. And God is good, and God is wise, and God is powerful, but God gives us free will. Now think about this. It's better to feed children than to starve or abuse them, right? It's better to help a hungry person than to place bets on how long it would take him to starve. Why? How do we know these moral judgments? It's because not only is God's law written on our heart, but there is a God that is the ultimate embodiment of righteousness, virtue, purity, and we know good and evil. We know right from wrong because God has given us a moral conscience and because God exists. So, the problems of pain and suffering in this world are not proof that there isn't a God. It's indicative of how much we need God to change our lives, save our souls, and make us righteous people as we allow Him to control our lives. That's the real solution.